CEO Billionaire was engaged, but on a business trip he fell for his assistant and everything changed. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 42nd floor, but inside the pristine executive suite of Castellanos Global in Manhattan, silence reigned supreme. Leonardo Castellanos adjusted his platinum cufflinks for the third time in 10 minutes, a nervous habit he'd never quite managed to shake despite 20 years of commanding boardrooms. At 42, he was the embodiment of American corporate success, 6'2" with an athletic build, maintained through disciplined early morning workouts, steel grey eyes that could freeze a negotiation with a single glance, and dark hair perfectly styled even after 16-hour days. His Italian suits were tailored to perfection, his presence commanding every room he entered. But today, something felt different. Mr. Castellanos. The voice belonged to his longtime secretary, Margaret, who rarely showed emotion. Today, however, concern crept into her typically professional tone. There's been a situation. Leonardo's jaw tightened imperceptibly. In his world, situations meant millions in potential losses or diplomatic disasters that could tank stock prices. What kind of situation, Margaret? It's about your trip to Barcelona tomorrow, the Renewable Energy Conference. Margaret clutched her tablet like a shield. Ms. Valeria, she's been hospitalized. His fiancée, the stunning Spanish businesswoman and influencer who was supposed to accompany him to Spain, where their engagement would be announced to the European press. Valeria Montoro, beautiful, ambitious, and the perfect complement to his empire. On paper. Hospitalized, what happened? Food poisoning from that new sushi place in Soho. She's stable, but her publicist says she'll be bedridden for at least a week. Margaret paused. Sir, the Barcelona meetings are crucial. The European investors are expecting both of you. The announcement about the merger with Montoro Industries. Leonardo rubbed his temples. This conference wasn't just business. It was the foundation of everything he'd built his future around. A strategic alliance disguised as a love story, carefully orchestrated for maximum impact. We'll have to postpone. Actually, sir, Margaret interrupted gently, I took the liberty of reviewing your options. Your new personal assistant could accompany you. She's been briefed on all your international protocols and... My new assistant? Leonardo frowned. In 3 months, he'd barely noticed the woman beyond her impeccable efficiency. Margaret, this isn't a simple business trip. The optics alone. Sir, with respect, Ms. Bennett is exceptionally qualified. She has a master's in international business from Columbia, speaks 3 languages fluently, and has managed more complex logistics in her first quarter here than most assistants handle in years. Leonardo walked to his window, gazing down at the bustling streets of Manhattan. Somewhere in this concrete jungle was a woman he'd hired, but never really seen, Amara Bennett. He remembered her interview vaguely, a poised woman with an elegant way of speaking, impressive credentials, and eyes that seemed to see right through corporate facades. What do you know about her background? Single, 30 years old, graduated top of her class, worked for smaller firms before coming to us, raised in Brooklyn by her mother after her father passed when she was 12. Margaret consulted her notes. She's different from your usual staff, sir. More direct. Less willing to simply agree with everything you say. That caught his attention. In his world of yes men and carefully calculated responses, someone who challenged him was either dangerous or refreshing. He couldn't decide which. Send her up. 20 minutes later, Amara Bennett knocked twice on his door. Not the tentative tap of someone seeking permission, but the confident announcement of someone who belonged. Come in. She entered with the kind of presence that didn't demand attention, but simply commanded it. Amara was stunning in an understated way that made Valeria's carefully curated beauty seem almost artificial in comparison. Her rich, dark skin had a natural glow, and her hair was styled in elegant natural curls that framed her face perfectly. She wore a well-tailored navy blazer that emphasized her curves without being inappropriate, and when she moved, it was with the grace of someone completely comfortable in her own skin. But it was her eyes, deep brown with flecks of gold, that stopped him cold. They held intelligence, warmth, and something else he couldn't quite identify. Experience, perhaps, or wisdom earned through struggle. Mr. Castellanos, she said, her voice carrying just a hint of Brooklyn in its warm tones. Margaret mentioned you needed to discuss the Barcelona trip. Miss Bennet. He gestured to the chair across from his desk, noting how she sat with perfect posture, but without the rigid formality most employees displayed in his presence. Are you prepared to travel internationally on short notice? I've been packed since Margaret called 30 minutes ago. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. I assume Ms. Montoro's absence creates some complications beyond simple logistics. Direct. Margaret hadn't been lying. Most people danced around his personal life with elaborate euphemisms. Amara simply acknowledged the reality. The European press will have questions. Investors will wonder about the stability of our partnership with Montoro Industries. This conference was meant to be a debut of sorts. For your engagement announcement. It wasn't a question. Yes. Amara leaned back slightly, studying him with those perceptive eyes. Mr. Castellanos, I can manage logistics, handle press inquiries, and ensure your meetings run smoothly. But I won't pretend to be something I'm not. And I won't ask you to pretend either. If you need an actress, you need someone else. If you need a professional who can help you navigate this situation with integrity, then I'm your person. For the first time in months, Leonardo felt something shift inside his chest. Not attraction. He wouldn't allow that. But recognition. Here was someone who understood the difference between playing a role and being authentic. The flight leaves at 6 a.m. Can you be ready? I'll be at the airport at 4:30. She stood gracefully. Is there anything specific I should know about your preferences for international travel? Just be yourself, Miss Bennet. It seems that might be exactly what this trip needs. As she reached the door, she paused and turned back. Mr. Castellanos, for what it's worth, any man who needs to announce his happiness to investors probably isn't as happy as he thinks he is. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving Leonardo staring at the space where she'd been standing. In 12 hours, he'd be on a plane to Barcelona with a woman who'd just spoken more truth to him in 10 minutes than his fiancée had in 6 months. What the hell had he just agreed to? The private jet hummed quietly at 37,000 feet, crossing the Atlantic under a canopy of stars that seemed close enough to touch. Leonardo had expected awkwardness. He'd prepared for small talk, professional distance, and the kind of carefully maintained boundaries that defined his relationship with every employee. What he hadn't expected was to find himself genuinely curious about the woman sitting across from him, absorbed in a worn paperback copy of Gabriel Garcia Marquez's Love in the Time of Cholera, in Spanish. You read Spanish literature in the original language? He asked, unable to hide his surprise. Amara glanced up, her reading glasses perched on her nose, making her look younger and somehow more approachable. My grandmother was Dominican. She insisted I learn properly, not just business Spanish, but the language of poets and dreamers. She smiled softly. She used to say that if you only know how to negotiate contracts in a language, you don't really know it at all. And what does Garcia Marquez tell you that the English translation doesn't? That love isn't always beautiful or convenient. Sometimes it's messy and inconvenient, and completely wrong for everyone involved. She closed the book, keeping her finger as a bookmark. But it's still real. The weight of her words settled between them like a challenge. Leonardo loosened his tie, something he never did during business hours, but 30,000 feet above the ocean felt like neutral territory. Is that why you've never married? The question slipped out before he could stop himself. I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. No, it wasn't. Amara removed her glasses, folding them carefully. I've never married because I've never met a man who could love me without trying to change me. My last relationship ended because he thought my ambitions were too much for a woman. Apparently, wanting to build something meaningful instead of just being arm candy made me difficult. His loss? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just selective about who gets to know the real me. She studied his face in the dim cabin lighting. What about you, Mr. Castellanos? Are you marrying for love or strategy? The directness of her question should have offended him, should have reminded him of boundaries and professional distance. Instead, it felt like relief, someone finally asking what everyone was thinking. 6 months ago, I would have said both. Valeria is compatible with my lifestyle. She understands the demands of business, the need for public appearances, the reality of our social circle. That's not an answer. Leonardo stood, moving to the small bar area of the cabin. Would you like some wine? This Barolo is exceptional. Are you changing the subject because the answer makes you uncomfortable, or because you don't know what the answer is? He poured 2 glasses of wine, his hands steadier than his thoughts. When he returned to his seat, Amara was watching him with those perceptive eyes that seemed to see past every defense he'd carefully constructed. When I proposed to Valeria, it felt logical, smart, the right move for both our careers, our families, our futures. He took a sip of wine, buying time. But logic isn't the same thing as love, is it? No, it isn't. Her voice was gentle, without judgment. But admitting that takes courage. Does it? Or does it just make me a coward who's been lying to himself? Maybe both. Amara smiled, and something in that smile made his chest tighten. The question is, what are you going to do with that revelation? Before he could answer, the plane hit turbulence. Not dangerous, but enough to make the cabin lights flicker and send Leonardo's wine splashing across his shirt. He cursed softly, reaching for napkins. Here, let me... Amara was already moving, dabbing at the stain with efficient, gentle movements. She smelled like vanilla and something floral, jasmine maybe, and when she looked up from his shirt, her face was inches from his. For a moment, time seemed suspended. Her hand was still pressed against his chest, his heart beating rapidly beneath her palm. Her lips were slightly parted, her breathing shallow. The professional distance they'd maintained crumbled in the space of a heartbeat. "Amara," he whispered, his voice rougher than intended. She stepped back quickly, but not before he saw something flicker in her eyes. Awareness, attraction, and something that looked dangerously like longing. "I should let you change." Her voice was steadier than her hands, which trembled slightly as she returned to her seat. "We'll be landing in Madrid in 2 hours for refueling." Leonardo nodded, not trusting his voice. In the jet's small bathroom, he stared at his reflection while changing shirts. The man looking back at him seemed like a stranger. Hair slightly mussed, eyes brighter than they'd been in months, and an expression he hadn't seen since his 20s. When was the last time he'd felt this alive? When he emerged, Amara was back to reading, but he noticed she hadn't turned a single page. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension, and suddenly the 8-hour flight to Barcelona seemed both endless and far too short. "Amara?" "Yes?" "Thank you for your honesty earlier. It's been a long time since anyone challenged me to think beyond the safe choices." She looked up, her smile softer now, more personal. "Maybe that's because you surround yourself with people who are more interested in your money than your happiness. And which are you interested in?" The question hung in the air like a dare. Amara closed her book completely, setting it aside. "Neither, actually. I'm interested in the man who gets lost in thought staring out airplane windows, the one who knew that Garcia Marquez quote well enough to discuss it, the one who just admitted he might not love the woman he's supposed to marry." She paused, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I'm interested in the man who's brave enough to question everything he thought he wanted." Leonardo's throat went dry. "Amara, we're landing in Madrid in 90 minutes, she said, returning to her book with studied casualness. "You might want to get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be complicated." But as Leonardo reclined his seat and closed his eyes, rest was the last thing on his mind. Because somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, between turbulence and Spanish poetry, something fundamental had shifted, and he had no idea what he was going to do about it. The Gothic quarter of Barcelona looked like something from a dream in the early morning light. Leonardo stood on the balcony of his suite at the Hotel Casa Fuster, watching the ancient city come alive below. Stone gargoyles perched on centuries-old buildings seemed to watch back, knowing witnesses to secrets whispered in shadows. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd chosen this particular hotel because Valeria loved its old-world elegance and Instagram-worthy architecture. Now 3 floors below, Amara was probably experiencing Barcelona for the first time, and he found himself wondering what she thought of it. A soft knock interrupted his brooding. "Mr. Castellanos, the car will be here in 20 minutes. Her voice through the door sent an unwelcome jolt through his system. "I'll be right down." But when the elevator doors opened in the lobby, Leonardo forgot how to breathe. Amara stood near the concierge desk, wearing a sleek black business dress that hugged her curves in all the right places, her natural curls styled in an elegant updo that showcased the graceful line of her neck. She'd added just enough makeup to enhance her natural beauty without hiding it, and when she turned toward him, her professional smile faltered for just a moment, long enough for him to see the same awareness that had been torturing him since their conversation on the plane. "Good morning," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I've confirmed your breakfast meeting with the Renewable Energy Consortium. They're expecting us at 9:30. "Us? I assumed you'd want me to take notes and handle any logistical questions." She tilted her head slightly. "Unless you'd prefer I wait in the hotel?" "No, you're right. I'll need you there." The words came out more brusque than intended, a defense against the way his heart sped up when she smiled. The ride through Barcelona's winding streets was an exercise in controlled tension. Amara sat across from him in the back of the Mercedes, reviewing his schedule on her tablet, occasionally pointing out landmarks with the enthusiasm of someone who appreciated beauty when she saw it. "The Sagrada Familia is incredible," she murmured, craning her neck to catch a glimpse of Gaudí's masterpiece through the tinted windows. "I read that it's been under construction for over a century and still isn't finished." "Some things are worth taking time to perfect," Leonardo found himself saying, "or some things are so ambitious that they require patience most people don't have." Her eyes met his briefly before returning to her tablet. "The question is whether the end result justifies the wait." Everything she said seemed to carry double meaning, leaving him analyzing her words long after she'd moved on to discussing his 2 o'clock meeting with German investors. The breakfast meeting at the exclusive Ola Example Hotel went better than expected. Amara sat quietly at his right, taking notes with practiced efficiency, but Leonardo found himself acutely aware of her presence. When she leaned forward to pour coffee, the subtle scent of her perfume made him lose his train of thought mid-sentence. When she asked an insightful question about carbon credit trading, the consortium members looked impressed, and Leonardo felt an unexpected surge of pride. "Your assistant is remarkably well informed," commented Henrik Larsson, the Swedish wind energy magnate, during a brief break. "Most executives bring decorative companions to these international meetings. You brought a strategist." "Ms. Bennett is exceptional," Leonardo replied, meaning every word. After the meeting, they walked through the cobblestone streets toward their next appointment. The morning was warming, and Barcelona pulsed with the energy of a city comfortable with its own magnificence. "You handled that beautifully," Leonardo told her, as they paused at a small plaza where a street musician played classical guitar. "Thank you. Though I noticed you seemed distracted during the discussion about offshore wind farms." Heat crept up his neck. "I was thinking about implementation challenges." Amara stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "Leonardo." The sound of his first name on her lips stopped him cold. Not Mr. Castellanos, not sir. Just his name, spoken like a question and a confession all at once. "We need to address what's happening here," she said quietly, her professional mask slipping. "Because I can't do my job effectively if I'm constantly wondering what you're thinking when you look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like I'm something you want, but no, you can't have." Her honesty was devastating in its simplicity. "Like I'm a temptation you're trying to resist." The guitar music swirled around them. Tourists passed by speaking in a dozen languages, and Leonardo felt the careful structure of his life beginning to crumble. "Amara, I'm engaged." "I know. To a woman I'm supposed to marry in 4 months. I know that too. And you're my employee. This is completely inappropriate." "Yes, it is." She stepped closer, close enough that he could see gold flecks in her brown eyes, close enough to count her heartbeats. "But inappropriate doesn't make it untrue." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I felt something shift between us on that plane, and I think you felt it too. I'm saying that I've spent 3 months watching you command boardrooms and intimidate investors, but yesterday I saw you vulnerable and real and—" She paused, gathering courage. "And I think you're about to marry the wrong woman for all the right reasons." Leonardo's phone buzzed. A text from Valeria. "Hope Barcelona is productive. Can't wait to see the press coverage of your success. Missing you. V." The message felt like ice water. Efficient, calculated, performative even in private. "I should go," he said, but made no move to leave. "Yes, you should." Amara's voice was soft, understanding. "But not because you want to." "No," he admitted. "Not because I want to." "Leonardo." The guitar player finished his song and the plaza fell silent except for the distant sounds of traffic. "When we get back to New York, I'm going to submit my resignation." "What? Why?" "Because I'm 28 years old, and I've never felt anything like what I feel when I look at you, and you're engaged to someone else." Her smile was heartbreaking. "And because I respect myself too much to be your consolation prize or your escape fantasy." She started walking toward their next meeting, leaving Leonardo standing alone in the plaza, with the realization that he was about to lose something he'd only just discovered he wanted. But as he watched her retreating figure, elegant and determined and completely out of his reach, one thought echoed in his mind with crystal clarity. What if Valeria wasn't the only engagement he needed to reconsider? The conference dinner at the Palau de Congressos stretched into the evening like an elaborate chess match, with Leonardo playing the role he'd perfected over decades, the charming, focused CEO who had everything under control, but control was the last thing he felt. Across the elegant ballroom, Amara moved with quiet efficiency, coordinating with event staff, managing his schedule and fielding questions from international press with the poise of someone born for diplomacy. She'd changed into a stunning deep burgundy dress that made her skin glow under the crystal chandeliers, and more than one investor had complimented him on his exceptional team. If they only knew that his exceptional team was planning to abandon him the moment they returned to New York. Leonardo! The booming voice belonged to Marcus Hoffmann, a German industrialist whose renewable energy empire rivaled his own. Where is the beautiful Valeria? The Spanish press was expecting to meet your fiancée tonight. The question Leonardo had been dreading all evening. She's dealing with a family emergency, he replied smoothly, the lie tasting bitter on his tongue. Ah, family comes first. Admirable. Marcus's eyes tracked to where Amara was gracefully deflecting questions from a persistent journalist. Though I must say, your assistant is quite remarkable. She speaks fluent German, did you know? Helped clarify some technical points about offshore wind patents with my team earlier. She's very capable. My friend, she's extraordinary, beautiful, intelligent, professional. Marcus lowered his voice conspiratorially. If I were not happily married and 30 years younger, I might try to steal her away from you. The possessive surge that shot through Leonardo was immediate and unwelcome. She's planning to leave the company soon. What? Why would you let such talent slip away? Because I'm falling in love with her and she's too smart to wait around for a man too cowardly to choose happiness over obligation. Business decisions, Leonardo muttered. The evening dragged on with painful sophistication, champagne toasts, strategic conversations, and the constant awareness of Amara's presence like a magnetic pull he couldn't ignore. By 10:30, the formal dinner was winding down, but the real networking was just beginning in the hotel's exclusive rooftop lounge. Leonardo found himself trapped in a discussion about carbon trading with 3 European ministers when his phone buzzed with a text from Amara. Flight delay. Weather in NYC. We're stuck here another night. I've booked you a suite at the same hotel. Another night. In Barcelona. With the woman who was systematically dismantling every certainty he'd built his life upon. An hour later, Leonardo escaped the networking session and found himself standing outside Amara's hotel room, his hand raised to knock, his heart hammering against his ribs like a caged bird. When she opened the door, she'd changed into dark jeans and a soft, cream-colored sweater that made her look younger and more approachable. Her hair was down, falling in soft curls around her shoulders, and she'd removed her makeup except for a hint of gloss on her lips. Leonardo, she didn't seem surprised to see him. Is everything all right? No, he said honestly. Nothing is all right. She stepped back to let him enter, and he found himself in a smaller but elegantly appointed room with French doors leading to a narrow balcony overlooking the Gothic quarter. Talk to me, she said simply. I can't stop thinking about what you said in the plaza, about resigning, about... He ran his hands through his hair, destroying the perfect style he'd maintained all day. About everything. That was the point. Was it? To make me question everything I've worked for? No. Amara moved to the balcony doors, gazing out at the illuminated cathedral spires. It was to make you question whether what you've worked for is actually what you want. And what if I discover it isn't? Then you make different choices. Leonardo joined her at the balcony, the night air cool against his skin. Below them, Barcelona pulsed with life. Couples walking hand in hand through narrow streets, late-night cafes spilling golden light onto cobblestones, the distant sound of laughter and music. Tell me about your childhood, he said suddenly. Amara glanced at him in surprise. That's random. Humor me. I want to understand who you are when you're not being my perfect assistant. A small smile played at her lips. Okay, I grew up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Small apartment, big dreams. My mom worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat after Dad died, cleaning offices at night, working at a daycare during the day. I learned early that nothing gets handed to you. Is that why you're so driven? Partly, but mostly because I watched my mother sacrifice everything for me, and I wanted to make sure it mattered. Her voice softened. She used to tell me that the most dangerous thing a woman could do was make herself small for a man's comfort, that if someone couldn't handle my ambition, my intelligence, my dreams, then they weren't worthy of my love. Smart woman. The smartest. Amara's eyes grew distant. She's fighting breast cancer now. Has been for 8 months. That's why I work so hard, save every penny. Treatment is expensive, even with insurance. The revelation hit Leonardo like a physical blow. Here he'd been, assuming her dedication was about career advancement, when it was about something far more fundamental: love, family, survival. Amara, I had no idea. If you need time off, if there's anything the company can do— No. Her voice was firm but not unkind. I don't want your pity or your charity. I want to earn what I need, and I want to do it with dignity. It's not charity. It's you trying to fix things because that's what powerful men do when they feel guilty. She turned to face him fully. But you can't fix this, Leonardo. You can't fix my mom's cancer. You can't fix your loveless engagement. And you can't fix whatever this is between us with money or grand gestures. Then what can I fix? Nothing. Some things can't be fixed. They can only be felt, or chosen, or walked away from. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and regret. A church bell tolled midnight somewhere in the distance. I don't want to walk away from you, Leonardo said quietly. I know. Amara's voice was barely a whisper. But you're going to, because you're scared of what choosing me would cost you, and I'm tired of being someone's secret what-if. She was right, and they both knew it. But as Leonardo looked into her eyes, seeing strength and vulnerability in equal measure, one truth crystallized with startling clarity. He was tired of being scared. What if I wasn't going to walk away? He asked. What if I was thinking about staying? Then I'd say you're not thinking clearly. But her breath caught slightly, betraying her. Maybe thinking clearly is overrated. Leonardo stepped closer, close enough to see her pulse fluttering at her throat, close enough to catch the scent of her perfume mixed with something uniquely her. Leonardo, I know all the reasons this is impossible. I know about Valeria, about my reputation, about the complications, but I also know that I've never felt more like myself than I have these past 2 days with you. And what about tomorrow? What about when we go back to New York and reality sets in? I don't know, he admitted, but I'm tired of making decisions based on fear instead of feeling. Amara looked at him for a long moment, and he could see the war playing out behind her eyes. Desire versus self-preservation, hope versus hard-earned wisdom. If I let you stay, she said finally, if I let this happen, I need you to understand something. I'm not interested in being your secret. I'm not interested in being the other woman while you figure out what you really want. If you're here because you've already decided, not because you're still deciding. The ultimatum hung in the air between them like a bridge, one he could cross or burn but not ignore. Leonardo looked into her eyes and saw his future reflected there, uncertain, complicated, but real in a way nothing had been for years. I've decided, he whispered, and then he kissed her. The first thing Leonardo noticed when consciousness crept back was the unfamiliar softness of morning light filtering through sheer curtains. The second was the warmth of bare skin against his chest, and the third, with a jolt that made his heart race, was the cascade of dark curls spilling across his shoulder. Amara. The night came rushing back in vivid fragments, her lips against his, the way she'd whispered his name like a prayer, the feeling of walls he'd spent decades building crumbling in the space of heartbeats. They'd made love with the desperate intensity of people who knew they were crossing a line they could never uncross, and afterward she'd fallen asleep in his arms, while Barcelona hummed its ancient lullabies outside her window. Now, in the gentle light of dawn, reality began to settle like lead in his stomach. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. 3 missed calls from Valeria, 7 text messages, 2 voicemails from his publicist about the Barcelona conference coverage, and 1 message that made his blood run cold. From Valeria. Feeling better. Flying to Barcelona this afternoon to surprise you. Can't wait to see the press coverage of our power couple debut. See you soon, mi amor. Shit, he breathed, careful not to wake Amara. But she was already stirring, her dark eyes opening slowly before focusing on his face. For a moment her expression was soft, vulnerable, the look of a woman waking up beside someone she cared about. Then awareness crept in, and Leonardo watched her retreat behind the professional mask he'd come to recognize as her armor. Good morning, she said quietly, pulling the sheet up to cover herself. Amara, don't. She sat up, avoiding his eyes. Don't make this more complicated than it already is with morning after speeches about how this was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, wasn't it? She turned to face him, and he was struck again by her beauty. Natural, unguarded, real in a way that made his chest ache. You're engaged, Leonardo, to a woman who's probably planning your wedding while you're in bed with your assistant. The word assistant stung, reducing what they'd shared to something tawdry and cliched. You're not just my assistant. No? Then what am I? Leonardo opened his mouth to answer and found himself speechless. What was she? The woman he was falling in love with? The person who made him question everything he thought he wanted? The most dangerous temptation of his carefully controlled life? I don't know, he admitted. Amara's laugh was bitter. At least you're honest. She rose from the bed with fluid grace, wrapping herself in a hotel robe, and Leonardo found himself memorizing every detail, the curve of her shoulders, the elegant line of her neck, the way she moved like water, even in moments of pain. We should talk about what happens now, he said. What happens now is that we go back to New York, and I submit my resignation as planned. What happened between us? It was beautiful, but it doesn't change anything. It changes everything. For who? For you? Amara turned from the window where she'd been watching the morning come alive over the Gothic quarter. Because, from where I'm standing, you're still engaged to Valeria Montoro. You're still the CEO who can't afford a scandal. And I'm still the woman who won't be anyone's secret. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Valeria. Just landed in Madrid, taking the train to Barcelona. Should be there by 2 p.m. Can't wait to celebrate your success together. Leonardo stared at the screen, feeling the walls of his old life closing in around him like a trap. She's coming here, he said numbly. Valeria, she's on her way to Barcelona. Amara went very still. When? This afternoon. The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, church bells began their morning call, and somewhere in the distance, Leonardo could hear the sound of life continuing, people going to work, children laughing, the world spinning on as if his entire universe hadn't shifted on its axis. Well, Amara said finally, her voice carefully controlled, I guess that settles things. Amara, please what? Please wait while you figure out how to juggle a fiancé and a mistress? Please be understanding while you decide whether your reputation is worth more than whatever this is between us? The harshness in her voice was a defense mechanism, and Leonardo recognized it because he'd built his own career on similar walls. But recognizing it didn't make it hurt any less. It's not like that. Isn't it? She moved around the room with efficient movements, gathering her clothes from the night before. I told you yesterday that I wouldn't be your secret, and you said you'd decided. But here we are, 12 hours later, and the first thing you're worried about is how to hide me from your fiancé. That's not fair. Fair? Amara stopped, her professional facade cracking to reveal the hurt underneath. Fair would have been you ending your engagement before you kissed me. Fair would have been you choosing me instead of choosing to complicate my life. Leonardo stood, reaching for his clothes, feeling exposed in more ways than one. I can end the engagement. I can call Valeria right now. And tell her what? That you slept with your assistant while she was sick in a New York hospital. Amara shook her head. That's not how this works, Leonardo. You don't get to blow up her life to make yourself feel better about your choices. Then what do you want me to do? I want you to handle your situation with integrity. Break up with Valeria because you don't love her, not because you slept with me. Handle it privately, cleanly, and with respect for the woman who trusted you enough to say yes when you proposed. The wisdom in her words was devastating, because it was absolutely right. Valeria deserved better than a man who'd checked out of their relationship emotionally months ago. She deserved better than a public humiliation, or a relationship that had become a business transaction disguised as love. And us? He asked quietly. There is no us. Not until you figure out who you are when you're not engaged to someone else. Amara was fully dressed now, her hair smoothed back into a professional style, her mask firmly in place. I meant what I said about resigning. When we get back to New York, I'm done. Don't do this. Don't punish us both because I'm handling this badly. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting myself. She moved toward the door, then paused. Leonardo, what we shared was real. Don't cheapen it by making it about anything other than two people connecting in a way that surprised them both. But don't make it about more than it can be right now either. After she left, Leonardo stood alone in the rumpled hotel room, surrounded by the ghost of her perfume and the weight of choices that felt impossible to make cleanly. His phone rang. Valeria's name flashed on the screen. Hello, mi amor, she purred when he answered. I'm so excited to see you. I've already spoken to 3 journalists about doing features on our relationship. This Barcelona trip is going to be perfect for our image. Our image. Not our relationship, not our love. Their image. Leonardo closed his eyes and realized that Amara was right about something else. He'd been living a lie for so long that he'd almost forgotten what truth felt like. It was time to remember. The Hotel Casa Fusta's lobby buzzed with the kind of controlled chaos that accompanied high-profile arrivals. Photographers lingered near the entrance, hotel staff whispered in rapid Spanish, and Leonardo stood near the marble reception desk, feeling like an actor who'd forgotten his lines. Valeria Montoro swept through the revolving doors at exactly 2:17 p.m., like a force of nature wrapped in designer silk. Tall, blonde, and devastatingly beautiful in the way that graced magazine covers, she moved with the calculated grace of someone who knew every camera angle was an opportunity. Her recovery from food poisoning seemed complete, if it had ever been more than a convenient excuse to avoid a trip she'd deemed not worth her time, until the press possibilities became clear. "Leonardo!" Her voice carried across the lobby, turning heads and causing phones to discreetly point in their direction. She rushed toward him with arms outstretched, her smile perfect for the cameras she knew were watching. He caught her in what looked like an embrace, but felt like a performance, breathing in her familiar perfume, expensive, sophisticated, and somehow artificial after the natural sweetness of jasmine he'd woken up to that morning. "Valeria, you look," he searched for words that wouldn't be lies. "You look completely recovered." "The miracle of good genetics and better doctors," she laughed, the sound bright and hollow. "I couldn't stay away once I realized how important this Barcelona conference was for our future. The Spanish press has been calling all morning. Everyone wants to interview the power couple reshaping renewable energy. Our future." The words felt foreign on his tongue as he kissed her cheek for the benefit of watching eyes. "Mr. Castellanos?" The voice belonged to Amara, who approached with professional composure that gave no hint of the intimacy they'd shared hours earlier. She'd changed into a crisp white blouse and navy blazer, her hair pulled back in a severe bun that seemed designed to erase any trace of the woman who'd laughed softly in his arms the night before. "Miss Bennett," he managed, his voice rougher than intended. Valeria's gaze shifted to Amara with the kind of assessment that happened in milliseconds but registered everything: attractiveness, intelligence, potential threat level. Leonardo watched the calculation happen behind his fiancée's perfect smile. "And you must be the assistant," Valeria said, extending a manicured hand. "I've heard so much about your efficiency." "Ms. Montoro." Amara's handshake was firm, professional, giving nothing away. "Welcome to Barcelona. I hope your recovery has been complete." "Oh, completely. Though I'm sure Leonardo managed just fine without me." Valeria's arm slipped possessively through his. "He's always been wonderfully self-sufficient. Haven't you, darling?" The endearment felt like broken glass in Leonardo's chest, especially with Amara standing close enough to hear every word. He caught a flicker of something in her eyes, pain, maybe, or disappointment, before her professional mask slammed back into place. "I should let you both get settled," Amara said smoothly. "Your dinner reservations are confirmed for 8 p.m. at Disfrutar. The car will be ready at 7:30. She turned to leave, but Valeria's voice stopped her. "Oh, Ms. Bennett, I do hope you'll join us for dinner. I'd love to get to know the woman who's been taking such good care of my fiancé." The invitation was honey-coated poison, delivered with a smile that didn't reach Valeria's eyes. Leonardo felt his stomach clench as he watched Amara process the request, knowing she was trapped between professional obligation and personal torture. "That's very kind, but I typically don't." "I insist," Valeria continued. "Consider it a celebration dinner. After all, Leonardo's success in Barcelona is a victory for all of us, don't you think?" Amara's gaze flicked to Leonardo, and in that brief moment, he saw everything she didn't say. "How dare you let her put me in this position? How can you stand there and say nothing while she toys with me?" "Of course," Amara replied evenly. "I'd be honored." 3 hours later, Leonardo sat in one of Barcelona's most exclusive restaurants, watching two women navigate a conversation that was really a carefully orchestrated war. Valeria had changed into a stunning red dress that commanded attention from every corner of the restaurant. She held court like the social media queen she was, regaling them with stories of her latest business ventures, her upcoming fashion collaborations, and the wedding plans she'd been perfecting during her recovery. "I've been thinking we should move the date up," she said, cutting into her perfectly prepared sea base. "Why wait until December? September would be divine. Just think of the lighting for photographs." Leonardo's wine glass froze halfway to his lips. "Move it up?" 3 months instead of 6. We are both established in our careers, we know what we want. Her smile was radiant and completely impersonal. Plus, the press coverage of our Barcelona success would be perfect timing for engagement announcements. Across the table, Amara maintained her professional composure, but Leonardo caught the way her fingers tightened around her water glass, the slight tension in her shoulders that spoke of someone enduring exquisite torture with grace. "That's sudden," he managed. "The best decisions usually are." Valeria reached for his hand, her diamond engagement ring catching the candlelight. "Don't you think, Miss Bennet, sometimes when you know something is right, waiting just seems silly?" Amara looked directly at Leonardo for the first time all evening, and her eyes held a message as clear as spoken words. "This is what you chose. This is what you're going back to." "I think," Amara said carefully, "that timing is crucial in all important decisions. Rushing can lead to complications, or it can lead to happiness." Valeria's laugh was musical and completely artificial. "I've never been one to overthink things. Life is too short to waste time on uncertainty, don't you agree, Leonardo?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Leonardo looked at his fiancée, beautiful, successful, socially perfect, and realized that everything about their relationship had been about image, timing, and strategic advantage. When had he stopped seeing her as a person and started seeing her as a business partnership? When had he ever really seen her at all? "Sometimes," he said slowly, "uncertainty means you're paying attention to what really matters." Valeria's smile faltered slightly. "That's very philosophical for a Tuesday night." "Barcelona has that effect on people," Amara interjected smoothly. "The city has a way of making you question assumptions." "Does it?" Valeria's gaze sharpened. "And what assumptions have you questioned during your time here, Ms. Bennet?" The question was loaded with subtext that made Leonardo's chest tighten. Amara held Valeria's stare with steady composure. "I've learned that sometimes the most professional thing you can do is recognize when a situation isn't sustainable." "How intriguing. And what makes a situation unsustainable? When maintaining it requires compromising your integrity." The silence that followed was deafening. Valeria's smile remained perfect, but her eyes had gone cold. Leonardo felt like he was watching a chess match where he understood neither the rules nor the stakes. "Well," Valeria said finally, "I suppose we all have our principles." "Yes," Amara replied quietly, "we do." Leonardo's phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, he glanced down and felt the blood drain from his face. The message was from Henrik Larsson, the German industrialist from the morning's meeting. "Leonardo, the most extraordinary thing. I just discovered that your brilliant assistant speaks fluent German, Spanish, and French. My wife and I would love to offer her a position with our Berlin headquarters. Is she available for poaching? We could triple her salary." He looked up to find both women watching him, Valeria with curious expectation, and Amara with something that looked like resignation. "Everything all right, darling?" Valeria asked. Leonardo stared at the phone, then at Amara, then at his fiancée, and realized that the ground beneath his perfectly constructed life was shifting in ways he could no longer control. "Actually," he said, his voice steadier than his hands, "I think we need to talk." The silence in Leonardo's hotel suite felt thick enough to cut with a knife. Valeria paced near the floor-to-ceiling windows, her red dress a stark contrast against the Barcelona skyline, twinkling in the darkness below. Leonardo sat on the edge of the bed, still in his dinner jacket, but with his tie loosened, looking like a man preparing for execution. "You want to talk?" Valeria's voice carried an edge he'd never heard before, sharp, calculating, dangerous. "Then let's talk about why you've been acting like a stranger since I arrived." "Valeria, no." She spun to face him, her perfectly applied makeup unable to hide the cold fury in her eyes. "Let me talk first. I flew here to surprise the man I'm supposed to marry in 3 months, and instead I find this, whatever this is." "What do you mean?" "Don't insult my intelligence, Leonardo." Valeria moved closer, her heels clicking against the marble floor with military precision. "I've built a career reading people, understanding subtext, recognizing when someone is lying to me. And you, mi amor, have been lying since the moment I walked into that lobby." Leonardo's throat felt dry as desert sand. "I haven't lied to you, haven't you? Then look me in the eye and tell me nothing has changed between us." He met her gaze and found himself unable to speak. The truth sat in his chest like a stone, too heavy to lift, too honest to voice. Valeria's laugh was bitter. "That's what I thought. Val, listen." "No, you listen." Her voice dropped to a whisper, that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. "I know about your assistant." The words hit Leonardo like a physical blow. "What? Did you really think you could hide it? The way you look at her? The way she looks at you when she thinks no one is watching?" Valeria pulled out her phone, swiping through photos. "I have very good sources, Leonardo. Very thorough sources." She turned the screen toward him, and Leonardo's heart stopped. There, in crystal-clear resolution, was a photograph of him and Amara on the plaza yesterday, standing close, intimate, his hand reaching toward her face in what had been a moment of pure connection. "Where did you get this? Does it matter? The point is, it exists, along with several others." Valeria's smile was sharp as a blade. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" "Valeria, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why you're emotionally cheating on me with your employee? Can you explain why I had to find out about it from a private investigator instead of from my own fiancé?" "A private investigator?" Leonardo stood, his shock genuine. "You had me followed?" "I had you protected." Valeria's voice remained cool, controlled. "My publicist suggested it after your first day here. The Spanish press can be creative with their stories. We needed to make sure there were no surprises that could damage our brand. Our brand, not our relationship. Their brand." "Jesus, Valeria, do you hear yourself? I hear a woman protecting her investment." She slipped the phone back into her purse, her movements calculated and precise. "And make no mistake, Leonardo, this engagement is an investment, for both of us." "Is that all it's ever been to you?" For the first time since arriving in Barcelona, Valeria's perfect composure cracked slightly. "Don't you dare make me the villain here. You're the one who proposed to me. You're the one who said you wanted a partner who understood your world, your ambitions, your need for someone who could match your success. I thought I did want that. And now you want what? To throw away everything we've built for a few nights with your secretary? She's not just—" Leonardo caught himself, but not quickly enough. "Not just what? Not just a secretary? Not just an employee?" Valeria's eyes glittered with something between fury and triumph. "Then what is she, Leonardo? What is she that I'm not?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, and Leonardo found himself face to face with a truth he'd been avoiding for months. Valeria had never been the woman he loved. She'd been the woman he thought he should love, the one who fit perfectly into the life he'd built, who complemented his success without challenging his soul. Amara was everything Valeria wasn't: real, unpredictable, unimpressed by his wealth and power. She saw him, not his portfolio. She challenged him, not his bank account. "She's honest," he said quietly. Valeria recoiled as if he'd slapped her. "Honest? And I'm not. When was the last time you told me how you really felt about anything? When was the last time we talked about something that mattered instead of image management and strategic opportunities? That's not fair, isn't it?" Leonardo sat back down heavily. "Val, when did we stop being people who cared about each other and become a business merger disguised as a love story? The moment you decided to fall in love with your assistant." The accusation hit its target, and Leonardo couldn't deny it. He was falling in love with Amara, had fallen, if he was honest with himself. "So what now?" he asked. "Where does this leave us?" Valeria walked to her purse, pulling out a tablet and setting it on the bed between them. "This is where it leaves us." Leonardo looked down at the screen and felt his world tilt on its axis. It was a contract, detailed, legal, and devastating in its implications. "What is this?" "A settlement agreement, drawn up by my lawyers this afternoon." Valeria's voice was pure business now, all pretense of emotion stripped away. "You break our engagement, you pay me $25 million for damages to my reputation, lost business opportunities, and emotional distress. You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. You think I didn't protect myself when I agreed to marry one of the richest men in America? You think I didn't consider the possibility that you might decide to trade me in for a younger model? It's not like that, isn't it?" Valeria sat across from him, her posture perfect even in her fury. "She's younger, she's beautiful, she's exotic enough to be interesting, but not threatening to your social circle. She's the perfect midlife crisis, Leonardo. Don't talk about her like that. Like what? Like she's a gold digger who saw an opportunity and took it? She's nothing like that." Leonardo's voice rose for the first time. "She's brilliant and strong, and she doesn't give a damn about my money. She was planning to quit before any of this happened." "Was she? How convenient." Valeria's smile was cold. "And now that she's slept with the boss, is she still planning to leave?" The question struck home because Leonardo didn't know the answer. After this morning, after the pain in Amara's eyes during dinner, after the way she'd looked at him like he was someone she was disappointed in, he had no idea what she was planning. "I don't know," he admitted. "Well, here's what I know." Valeria stood, smoothing her dress with practiced movements. "You have two choices. You can marry me as planned, we can make this work as the partnership it was always meant to be, and I'll forget about your little Barcelona adventure. Or you can chase after your assistant, pay me $25 million, and deal with the media storm that will follow when I tell the world exactly why our fairy tale engagement ended." Leonardo stared at the contract, his mind reeling. "You'd really do that? Destroy me publicly?" "I'd destroy the fantasy, Leonardo. The image of you as the perfect romantic hero. But destroy you?" She shrugged. "You're rich enough to survive a scandal. Your company is strong enough to weather some bad press. The question is she strong enough to survive being labeled as the homewrecker who broke up America's most admired power couple?" The threat hung in the air like poison. Leonardo looked at Valeria, really looked at her, and realized he was seeing her clearly for the first time. Beautiful, intelligent, ruthless, and completely without the warmth he'd somehow convinced himself she possessed. "I need time to think. You have until tomorrow morning." Valeria moved toward the door, then paused. "Leonardo, for what it's worth, I did care about you. In my way. But I care about myself more, I always have." After she left, Leonardo sat alone in the silent suite, staring at the contract that would either buy his freedom or destroy the woman he was falling in love with. His phone buzzed. A text from Amara. "Accepting the Berlin position. Flight leaves Thursday morning. Thank you for the opportunity to see Barcelona." Leonardo stared at the message until the letters blurred, finally understanding that some choices weren't about what you wanted. They were about what you could live with, and he was about to find out which kind of man he really was. Leonardo hadn't slept. At 5:47 a.m., he stood on his hotel balcony, watching Barcelona wake up beneath a sky painted in shades of rose and gold. The Gothic quarter stretched out below him like a maze of ancient secrets, and somewhere in that labyrinth was the woman who turned his carefully ordered world upside down, the woman who was planning to disappear from his life in less than 36 hours. His phone showed 17 missed calls from his lawyers in New York. Valeria had wasted no time sending them the settlement contract, and now his legal team was in full crisis mode, trying to find loopholes in an agreement that appeared airtight. $25 million, his reputation, Amara's future. The mathematics of love, it turned out, were brutal. A soft knock at his door interrupted his brooding. "Come in. Mr. Castellanos?" Amara's voice was carefully professional, but Leonardo could hear the exhaustion underneath. She entered carrying a tablet and a stack of documents, dressed in a charcoal blazer that somehow managed to make her look both untouchable and heartbreakingly beautiful. "You're up early," he observed. "I wanted to finish transferring your files before—" She gestured vaguely. "Before things get complicated. More complicated than they already are?" Amara set her materials on the coffee table with precise movements. "I assume Ms. Montoro told you about my conversation with Henrik Larsson." She mentioned it. Leonardo studied her face, searching for any hint of what she was feeling. "Is that really what you want? Berlin? What I want stopped being relevant the moment you decided to stay engaged." The words cut deep, but Leonardo couldn't argue with their accuracy. "Amara, don't." She held up a hand. "Please, don't make this harder than it already is. I'm trying to leave with whatever dignity I have left. What if I told you I was thinking about ending the engagement?" Amara's composure cracked slightly. "Are you?" Leonardo moved closer, close enough to see the faint circles under her eyes that suggested her night had been as sleepless as his. "What if I was willing to pay whatever price necessary to be with you? Then I'd say you haven't thought through what that price might be." Her voice was soft, but firm. "Leonardo, I know about the contract." "You know?" His blood went cold. "How? Hotel walls are thinner than you think, and Valeria's voice carries when she's angry." Amara sat heavily on the sofa, suddenly looking older than her 30 years. $25 million. Public scandal. Media destruction of the woman who stole America's most eligible bachelor. "I don't care about the money, but I care about the rest of it." Amara looked directly at him, her dark eyes filled with pain and resolve. "I care about my mother, who's already fighting the battle of her life without having to see her daughter's face plastered across tabloids as a homewrecker. I care about my career, my reputation, my ability to build something meaningful with my life that isn't defined by being someone's mistress." You wouldn't be my mistress. You'd be, what? Your girlfriend? Your partner? The woman everyone whispers about at business functions? Amara shook her head. I won't live in the shadow of your past choices, Leonardo. I won't be the consolation prize you chose after your perfect engagement fell apart. That's not what you are, isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting it feels exactly like that. Leonardo sat beside her on the sofa, careful to maintain distance but close enough to see the tears she was fighting not to shed. What if we could start over? What if we could find a way to build something without all this baggage? How? Your face is on magazine covers with her. Your engagement was announced in the Wall Street Journal. You can't just pretend the last 6 months didn't happen. I could try, and I could let you. Amara's voice was barely above a whisper. I could let you blow up your life for me, pay millions of dollars to escape a relationship you should never have entered, and then spend the rest of our time together wondering if you resent me for what it cost you. I would never. You might. Maybe not today, maybe not next year, but someday when the bills come due, literal or metaphorical, you might look at me and wonder if I was worth it. The honesty of her words was devastating, because Leonardo couldn't guarantee she was wrong. He wanted to believe he would never regret choosing her, but how could he promise something he'd never tested? So what are you saying? That we give up? That we pretend this never happened? I'm saying that maybe loving someone means protecting them from the wreckage of your past mistakes. Amara stood, moving to the window where golden morning light painted her skin like honey. I'm saying that Berlin might be the kindest choice for both of us. That's kind. Leonardo felt something snap inside his chest. Kind for who? For you, hiding in another country? For me, marrying a woman I don't love? For Valeria, getting exactly what she wants? For everyone who won't get destroyed by the scandal that follows if you choose me? And what about what we want? What about what we feel for each other? Amara turned from the window, and Leonardo saw his own heartbreak reflected in her eyes. Sometimes what we want and what we can have are different things. That's bullshit. Leonardo stood, his careful composure finally cracking. That's the kind of thing people say when they're too scared to fight for what matters. Scared? Amara's voice rose for the first time. You think I'm scared? I'm terrified, Leonardo. I'm terrified of loving you so much that I'd let you destroy yourself trying to be with me. I'm terrified of becoming the reason you lose everything you've worked for. I'm terrified of waking up in 5 years and realizing that we built our love on the ruins of other people's lives. So you'd rather run away? I'd rather leave while I can still remember this as something beautiful instead of something that became ugly. The silence that followed felt final, like the closing of a door that might never open again. Leonardo looked at the woman who'd changed everything for him in the space of 3 days and realized that loving someone sometimes meant accepting their choice, even when it tore your heart apart. When does your flight leave? He asked quietly. Tomorrow morning, 9:15. Will you? He cleared his throat. Will you let me drive you to the airport? Leonardo, please, just let me do that much. Amara studied his face for a long moment, and he saw the exact moment she made her decision. Okay, but just to the airport, not goodbye. Not goodbye, he agreed, though they both knew that's exactly what it would be. After she left, Leonardo sat alone in his suite with Valeria's contract spread across the coffee table like a death sentence. $25 million to buy his freedom. $25 million to choose love over logic, desire over duty. He picked up his phone and dialed his lawyer in New York. Morrison, it's Leonardo. I need you to do something for me. Sir, about this contract, we're still reviewing the terms, but I don't want you to review it. I want you to pay it. The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough that Leonardo wondered if the call had dropped. Sir, did you say pay it? Every penny. Whatever it takes to end this engagement cleanly and legally. I want it done today. Mr. Castellanos, that's $25 million. I know what it is. I also know what it buys me. Leonardo hung up and walked back to the balcony, watching Barcelona come alive beneath him. Somewhere in the city, Amara was probably packing, probably wondering if she'd made the right choice. In 18 hours, he'd find out if he had. The Barcelona El Prat airport bustled with the controlled chaos of international departures, but Leonardo heard none of it. His world had narrowed to the woman sitting beside him in the black Mercedes, staring out the window at the Spanish countryside, rushing past like a life she was leaving behind. Amara wore a simple navy dress and a cream cardigan, her natural curls pulled back in a low ponytail that made her look younger and more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. A single piece of luggage sat in the trunk. Everything else, she'd told him quietly, would be shipped later. "You don't have to come to the gate," she said without turning from the window. "The driver can take you back to the hotel." "I want to come." "Leonardo, please." His voice cracked slightly on the word. "Let me see you off properly." She nodded without looking at him, and Leonardo wondered if she was fighting the same battle he was, trying to memorize every detail before it became just a memory. His phone had been buzzing all morning, Valeria's lawyers confirming the settlement transfer, his own legal team expressing bewilderment at his decision, Henrik Larsson calling to congratulate him on letting that exceptional woman accept our offer. Each notification felt like another nail in the coffin of what might have been. The worst had been the message from his publicist. Valeria just posted to Instagram. "The breakup is official. Press conference scheduled for 3 p.m. Are you prepared for the storm?" He wasn't prepared for anything except watching the woman he loved disappear into the sky. "Gate B47, Amara said as they entered the departures terminal. "Lufthansa Flight 342 to Berlin." Leonardo nodded, his throat too tight for words. Around them, travelers rushed past with the urgency of people who knew where they belonged. He envied them their certainty. They walked through security in silence, past duty-free shops and cafes, past families saying tearful goodbyes, and business people checking emails with practiced indifference. When they reached her gate, Leonardo realized he wasn't ready for this moment. Might never be ready for. "Boarding begins in 30 minutes, Amara observed, checking her phone. "Amara." Leonardo turned to face her fully, drinking in every detail. The way her eyes held flecks of gold in the airport lighting, the soft curve of her mouth, the elegant line of her neck. "I need you to know something. Don't. Please don't make this harder. I paid it." The words came out in a rush. "The settlement, $25 million. I paid it this morning." Amara's face went completely still. "You did what?" "I ended the engagement. Valeria got her money, I got my freedom, and in about 2 hours the press is going to know that Leonardo Castellanos is no longer engaged to be married." "Leonardo," she sat down heavily in one of the uncomfortable airport chairs. "Why would you do that?" "Because I realized something yesterday, watching you try to protect me from the consequences of my own choices." Leonardo sat beside her, close enough to catch the familiar scent of jasmine that had haunted his dreams. "I realized that I've spent my entire adult life making safe decisions, building a safe life, choosing safe people who wouldn't challenge me or change me or make me risk anything that really mattered. And then I met you, and suddenly safe felt like settling. Suddenly everything I thought I wanted felt like a prison I'd built for myself." Amara's eyes filled with tears she was trying not to shed. "But the money is just money. I've got plenty of it, and I'll make more." Leonardo reached for her hands, relief flooding through him when she didn't pull away. "What I can't make more of is time with you. What I can't buy is another chance to tell you that you're not my consolation prize, or my midlife crisis, or my escape fantasy. Then what am I? You're the woman who made me remember who I used to be before I became so focused on success that I forgot what happiness felt like. You're the woman who sees me. Not my portfolio, not my influence, not my perfectly managed image, just me." "Leonardo." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I know you're scared about what comes next. I'm scared too. Terrified, actually. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you." Amara was crying openly now, tears streaming down her cheeks as she looked at him with a mixture of love and heartbreak that made his chest ache. "The Berlin job," she began, "is an incredible opportunity with people who recognize your worth. If that's what you want, if that's the future that makes you happy, then I'll support your decision. But if there's any part of you that wants to try building something with me, something real and messy and complicated and beautiful, then don't get on that plane. The scandal will be massive and ridiculous, and we'll survive it together. The press will get bored and move on to the next story. My mother will meet the man who loves her daughter and hopefully decide he's worthy of her." Amara laughed through her tears, a sound so beautiful that Leonardo wanted to bottle it and carry it with him forever. "You really paid $25 million to end your engagement? Best money I ever spent. You're completely insane, probably, but I'm insane about you." Over the airport intercom, a voice announced in Spanish, English, and German, "Lufthansa Flight 342 to Berlin now boarding at Gate B47. Please have your boarding passes ready." Amara looked toward the gate, then back at Leonardo, then at the boarding pass trembling in her hands. "If I stay," she said slowly, If I don't get on that plane, what happens then? Then we figure it out together. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one challenge at a time. No guarantees? No guarantees except that I'll choose you every day for as long as you'll let me. Final boarding call for Lufthansa Flight 342 to Berlin. All passengers should be on board at this time. Amara stood, her boarding pass still clutched in her hand, and Leonardo felt his heart suspend its beating. She walked toward the gate, her heels clicking against the polished floor, and for a moment he was certain he'd lost her. Then she stopped. Slowly, deliberately, she tore the boarding pass in half. She turned back to Leonardo, her smile radiant through her tears, and said the words that would change everything. So, what happens now? Leonardo rose from his chair, crossed the small distance between them, and kissed her with all the desperate relief of a man who'd just been granted a second chance at happiness. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, both laughing and crying at the same time, Leonardo whispered against her forehead, "Now we go home, and we build something beautiful." Around them, the airport continued its eternal dance of arrivals and departures, but Leonardo and Amara stood still in the eye of their own private hurricane, finally ready to weather whatever storm came next. Together. 6 months later, New York City. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Leonardo's penthouse, painting golden rectangles across the hardwood floors, where Amara sat cross-legged, papers spread around her like flower petals. "The renewable energy project in Costa Rica is ahead of schedule," she reported without looking up from her laptop. "The local community leaders want to host a celebration when we visit next month." Leonardo paused in his trek to the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, and marveled at the surreal normalcy of the scene. 6 months ago, he'd been engaged to a woman who treated breakfast like a photo opportunity. Now, Amara sat in his living room in yoga pants and one of his Columbia University t-shirts, her natural curls escaping from a messy bun as she managed international projects with the same focused intensity she brought to everything else. "We should bring something special," he suggested. "What's traditional in Costa Rica for celebrations?" "Music, dancing, and lots of food." Amara finally looked up, her reading glasses perched on her nose, her smile warm and unguarded. "Also, your Spanish needs work before we get there. My Spanish is perfectly adequate for business. Your Spanish sounds like you learned it from a textbook written in 1987. She stood, stretching like a cat in the morning light, which you probably did. Leonardo set down his coffee and moved toward her, drawn by the magnetic pull that had never faded, despite 6 months of morning routines and shared grocery lists, and all the beautiful mundane details of building a life together. "Maybe you could tutor me," he suggested, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Maybe I could." She stood on her tiptoes to kiss him softly. "But I charge very high rates for private lessons." "How high?" Amara pretended to consider this seriously. "Dinner at that little Italian place in Brooklyn, the one where your credit cards don't impress anyone, and the owner's grandmother still makes the pasta by hand." "Done." Leonardo kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. "Though I should warn you, the paparazzi still follow us sometimes." "Let them. Maybe Nonna will yell at them in Italian." It had been like this for months, the slow, sweet process of building something real while the media circus gradually lost interest in their story. The first few weeks had been brutal, tabloid headlines screaming about the assistant who stole a billionaire's heart, and from boardroom to bedroom, an American love story. Valeria had given exactly one interview, tastefully devastating, in which she wished them well with the kind of grace that made her look like the dignified victim and them like the dramatic homewreckers. But Amara had surprised everyone, including Leonardo, with her handling of the spotlight. She'd refused to hide, refused to apologize, and refused to play the role of either the gold-digging seductress or the innocent victim. Instead, she'd simply been herself, brilliant, poised, and utterly unimpressed by the circus surrounding their relationship. When a particularly aggressive reporter had cornered her outside her mother's hospital in Brooklyn, demanding to know if she felt guilty about breaking up America's golden couple, Amara had looked directly into the camera and said, "I fell in love with a good man who had the courage to choose happiness over convenience. If that threatens you, maybe you should examine why." The clip had gone viral, the narrative had shifted, and slowly the media had moved on to fresher scandals. "Speaking of dinner," Amara said, returning to her papers, "your mother called. She wants to know if we're coming to the Hampton house this weekend." Leonardo groaned. His mother, Patricia Castellanos, had initially been horrified by what she called his public spectacle. But Amara had won her over during their first meeting with a combination of genuine warmth, impressive knowledge of art history, and an ability to discuss Patricia's beloved rose garden with actual expertise. What did you tell her? That we'd be there Saturday evening. I may have also mentioned that I'd bring my famous tres leches cake. You don't have a famous tres leches cake. I will by Saturday. Amara grinned. Your mother deserves better than store-bought dessert. This was who she was. The woman who learned to make elaborate cakes to impress his mother, who spoke 3 languages fluently, but still blushed when he complimented her intelligence, who had turned down Henrik Larsson's job offer in Berlin, but accepted his invitation to consult on renewable energy projects across Europe. She'd also insisted on keeping her own apartment in Brooklyn, though she spent most nights at his penthouse. I need to know I'm here because I want to be, she'd explained, not because I have nowhere else to go. Leonardo understood. After a lifetime of relationships built on convenience and strategic advantage, the choice to be together, renewed every day, felt like the most honest thing he'd ever done. How's your mom feeling? He asked. Amara's smile softened. Good days and bad days, but more good than bad lately. The new treatment seems to be helping. She paused. She wants to meet you properly, not just the quick hospital visits. I'd like that. She's protective, and she doesn't trust men with too much money. Smart woman. She raised me to be smart too. Amara moved closer, her hands smoothing the lapels of his shirt. Which is why I know exactly how lucky I am. Lucky how? Lucky to love a man who was brave enough to pay $25 million to choose me. Lucky to love a man who looks at me like I'm the most interesting person in every room. Lucky to love a man who... She hesitated, suddenly shy. Who what? Who makes me feel like I'm home? The words hit Leonardo square in the chest, knocking the breath from his lungs with their simple truth. Home. Not his penthouse, not his wealth, not his carefully curated life, but this, morning coffee and shared projects, and a woman who saw him clearly and loved him anyway. Amara, he began, then stopped, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he wanted to say. What? Instead of speaking, Leonardo walked to his desk, opened the top drawer, and pulled out a small velvet box that had been waiting there for 3 weeks. Amara's eyes went wide. Leonardo, I know we've talked about this, he said, his heart hammering against his ribs. About taking things slow, about not rushing into anything that looks like what I had before. Leonardo, but this isn't what I had before. This isn't about image or strategy or convenience. He dropped to one knee in his own living room, surrounded by her scattered papers and the comfortable debris of their shared life. This is about waking up every morning grateful that you're in my world. This is about wanting to build something with you that's ours, not mine or yours, but ours. Amara's hands flew to her mouth, tears already streaming down her cheeks. This is about loving you so much that $25 million felt like pocket change compared to the cost of losing you. Leonardo opened the box to reveal a ring he'd had designed specifically for her, elegant but not ostentatious, with a center stone the color of whiskey and gold that matched her eyes. Amara Bennett, will you marry me? Not for the press or the photos or because it makes sense on paper, but because I can't imagine my life without your laughter in it. Yes. The word came out as a sob. Yes, yes, of course, yes. Leonardo slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that shook slightly, then stood and caught her as she launched herself into his arms. They spun around the sun-drenched living room, both laughing and crying, both dizzy with the simple miracle of being chosen and choosing in return. I love you, Amara whispered against his neck. I love you so much it terrifies me. Good, Leonardo whispered back. Being terrified means we're doing something that matters. Later, much later, they lay tangled together on the sofa, Amara's engagement ring catching the afternoon light as she traced patterns on Leonardo's chest. So what happens now? She asked, echoing her question from the Barcelona airport. Now we plan a wedding that's actually about us instead of everyone else. Small? Intimate. Your mother will hate that. My mother will survive. What matters is what we want. Amara lifted her head to look at him, her expression serious. What I want is to marry you in front of the people who love us for who we actually are. What I want is to promise you forever, in a way that feels real, not performed. What else do you want? I want to keep working on projects that matter. I want to travel with you and build things together and maybe, she blushed, maybe someday have a family that knows what real love looks like. All of that sounds perfect. Even the family part. That's still theoretical. Especially the family part. Leonardo kissed the top of her head. I want to give our kids what I never had. Parents who chose each other every day, not just on their wedding day. As the sun began to set over Manhattan, painting their living room in shades of amber and rose, Leonardo held the woman he loved and marveled at the strange mathematics of the heart. He'd started this journey engaged to the wrong woman for all the right reasons, and ended it engaged to the right woman despite every possible complication. The press would have questions. His board might have concerns. There would be prenups and logistics and all the tedious details that came with merging two lives. But none of that mattered compared to the weight of Amara's engagement ring on her finger and the promise it represented, not just of marriage but of choosing love over fear, authenticity over image, and each other over everything else the world might offer. Leonardo, Amara's voice was drowsy with contentment. Thank you. For what? For being brave enough to choose me, for being brave enough to choose us. Leonardo tightened his arms around her, breathing in the scent of jasmine and vanilla and home. Thank you, he replied, for being worth choosing. Outside, New York City hummed its eternal song of ambition and possibility. Inside, two people who'd found their way to each other, despite every obstacle, held each other close and dreamed of all the beautiful tomorrows still to come. 2 years later, Tuscany, Italy, September. The vineyard stretched out like a patchwork quilt across the rolling hills, heavy with grapes ready for harvest and drenched in the golden light that only Italy seemed capable of producing. Leonardo stood on the stone terrace of the villa they'd rented for their second anniversary, watching his wife move through the garden below with the easy grace that still stopped his heart after all this time. Amara wore a flowing sundress the color of sunset, her natural curls catching the breeze as she laughed at something his mother was saying about the ancient olive trees. In her arms, their 6-month-old daughter Isabella gurgled happily, tiny hands reaching for the dancing shadows of leaves overhead. She's going to be as beautiful as her mother, Patricia Castellanos observed, her voice carrying up to where Leonardo stood. And twice as stubborn, if the way she refuses to take bottles from anyone but Amara is any indication. Stubborn runs in the family, Amara replied, adjusting Isabella's sun hat with practiced ease. Her father once paid $25 million just to prove a point about love. Best investment I ever made, Leonardo called down, earning himself a radiant smile from his wife and an eye roll from his mother. He descended the stone steps to join them, his heart doing that familiar flutter it had performed every day for the past 2.5 years, whenever Amara looked at him like he was exactly where she wanted to be. How was your call with the Costa Rica team? She asked, settling Isabella into his arms with the fluid choreography of parents who'd learned to pass their child between them like a precious secret. The solar project is exceeding all projections. They want to expand into 3 neighboring communities. Leonardo kissed his daughter's forehead, breathing in that intoxicating baby scent that had made him understand, finally, what people meant when they talked about love changing everything. Alejandro says to tell you that your engineering recommendations were, and I quote, brillante beyond belief. My Spanish is rubbing off on you, among other things. Amara blushed, even after 2 years of marriage, and Leonardo felt that familiar surge of tenderness for the woman who could command international business meetings in 3 languages, but still got shy when he flirted with her in front of his mother. I should check on dinner, Patricia announced tactfully. The chef promised us something special tonight. After she disappeared into the villa, Leonardo and Amara settled onto the stone bench overlooking the vineyard, Isabella content to observe the world from her father's lap, with the serious expression that reminded everyone of her mother's thoughtful nature. Do you ever think about Barcelona? Amara asked suddenly. Every day. Leonardo adjusted Isabella's position, marveling at how perfectly she fit in the crook of his arm. Do you? Sometimes I can't believe it was only 4 days that changed everything. 4 days and one very smart woman who refused to let me make the biggest mistake of my life. You mean the woman who almost got on a plane to Berlin? The woman who was brave enough to tear up a boarding pass and trust me with her heart? Amara leaned against his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. Isabella dozed in Leonardo's arms, her tiny fist curled around his finger, with the unconscious trust that never failed to humble him. I got a call today too, Amara said eventually. From Valeria. Leonardo tensed slightly. Really? She's engaged. To a tech entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. Apparently it's a perfect strategic alliance, according to her publicist. Amara's voice held no bitterness, only a kind of bemused affection. She wanted to congratulate us on Isabella, and to say that she hopes we're happy. Are you happy, I mean? Amara lifted her head to look at him, and Leonardo saw his entire world reflected in her dark eyes. Their daughter, their home, their imperfect and beautiful life together. Leonardo Castellanos, she said solemnly, I am so happy it scares me sometimes. Good scared or bad scared? Good scared. The kind that reminds you not to take any of it for granted. Isabella stirred in Leonardo's arms, opening eyes that were already showing hints of her mother's warm brown with flecks of her father's grey. She looked between her parents with the grave attention of someone taking important notes, then gifted them with one of her rare, gummy smiles. She knows, Amara whispered. She knows she's loved. She should. She's got the two most devoted parents in Italy right now. Just Italy? Fine. Europe. Just Europe? Leonardo kissed his wife's temple, breathing in the scent of jasmine and vanilla that had become synonymous with home. The world, Mrs. Castellanos. She's got the two most devoted parents in the world. As the Italian sunset painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, Leonardo held his family close and marveled at the circuitous path that had led him here. From a sterile engagement built on strategy to a marriage built on truth. From a life carefully constructed to impress others to a life joyfully shared with the people who mattered most. His phone buzzed with the day's final business messages, but he ignored it. Tomorrow there would be conference calls and project meetings, and all the beautiful complexity of building sustainable energy solutions across 3 continents. Tonight there was only this: his wife's laughter as Isabella grabbed a handful of his shirt, his mother's voice drifting from the villa as she sang old Italian songs, and the profound contentment of a man who had learned the difference between success and happiness. What are you thinking about? Amara asked. I'm thinking about how different this is from what I thought I wanted. Better or worse? Impossible to compare. It's like... Leonardo searched for the right words. It's like I was colorblind before and I thought I was seeing the whole spectrum, but I was only seeing shades of gray. And now? Now I see everything. Isabella chose that moment to reach for her mother, and Amara gathered their daughter into her arms with the natural grace that had captivated Leonardo from their very first meeting. Watching them together, his brilliant, beautiful wife and their perfect, impossible daughter, Leonardo felt the same overwhelming gratitude that had become his daily prayer. Leonardo? Amara's voice was soft, thoughtful. Do you think we'll tell Isabella the whole story someday? About Barcelona, about Valeria, about how we almost didn't happen? Leonardo considered this, watching his daughter's tiny fingers explore her mother's face with scientific curiosity. I think we'll tell her that love isn't always convenient or easy or logical, that sometimes the best things in life require courage and sacrifice and the willingness to disappoint people who want you to choose safety over truth. And that her parents were brave enough to choose each other, even when it was complicated, especially when it was complicated. Amara smiled, the expression so radiant that Leonardo felt his heart skip a beat, just as it had in that Barcelona hotel lobby 2.5 years ago. I love our story, she said simply. Even the messy parts. Especially the messy parts. They make the beautiful parts mean more. As night fell over the Tuscan hills and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, the Castellanos family made their way back to the villa, where Patricia was indeed preparing something special. Not just dinner, but the kind of evening that becomes a treasured memory, the kind that gets recalled decades later with wonder and gratitude. Later, much later, after Isabella had been fed and bathed and sung to sleep in her travel crib, Leonardo and Amara sat on their bedroom balcony sharing a bottle of Chianti and planning their next adventure. Costa Rica in October, Amara mused. Isabella's first passport stamp. She's going to be a world traveler before she can walk. She's going to know that love isn't limited by geography or circumstances or other people's expectations. She's going to know, Leonardo agreed, pulling his wife closer, that when you find someone worth fighting for, you fight. And when you find someone worth building with, you build. And when you find someone worth choosing every single day, you choose them, Amara finished. Every single day. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the Italian countryside and the soft breathing of their daughter through the open bedroom door. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new opportunities to make a difference in the world, but tonight they had everything they needed. Amara? Leonardo's voice was barely above a whisper. Yes? Thank you. For what this time? For tearing up that boarding pass. For taking a chance on us. For making me braver than I ever thought I could be. Amara turned in his arms, her face luminous in the moonlight, and kissed him with the same passion and tenderness that had defined their love from the very beginning. Thank you, she whispered against his lips, for being worth the risk. In the distance, church bells chimed midnight, marking the end of another perfect day in their imperfect, beautiful, extraordinary life together. A message from the heart. Sometimes love arrives like a storm, sudden, overwhelming, changing everything in its path. Sometimes it arrives like sunrise, gradual, inevitable, illuminating what was always meant to be. For Leonardo and Amara, love arrived like Barcelona itself, ancient and modern, complicated and simple, challenging them to see past their fears and choose what their hearts knew to be true. Their story reminds us that the most meaningful relationships aren't built on convenience or strategy, but on the courage to be vulnerable with someone who sees us clearly and loves us anyway. That sometimes the best decisions are the scariest ones. That love worth having is love worth fighting for. Would you have had the courage to tear up that boarding pass? Would you have chosen love over security, truth over convenience, the unknown over the familiar? Your thoughts and stories matter to us. Please share them in the comments below. Every love story is unique, but the courage it takes to write one is universal. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.